You got to actually get in the top 10 the room to be in the conversation.
Yo, what's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it's Guardy3, and of course, right next to me is once again my very awesome co-host. It is Mo Betta. Mo, how you doing?
Doing great, guys, on a feel-good Friday eve. On the eve of Friday, we got NBA playoffs. Two teams are up 1-0 in their respective conference finals. The all-NBA teams, the different selections, 1, 2, and 3. Lots to talk about. Let's get it.
Alrighty. And of course there's lots to talk about, but you know how we gotta start it off? We gotta talk about some underrated players. Which, you know, honestly, this is one of my favorite parts of the podcast. I love talking about underrated players every week. So Mo, why don't you get us started? You got an underrated player for us this week?
I do, and I've been watching this kid. The more he's been put into the rotation, the more playing time he get. I just really like what he's done since Dallas has made him a prominent part of their rotation, and I'm talking about Derek Lively. I think what he gives them is not just a post presence in terms of what he can do defensively. It's his activity at setting screens, rolling to the hoops, and finishing strong at the rim. And not to mention, in late game situations, teams are testing him, sending him to the foul line, and this kid is stepping up to the line and he's knocking down those free throws. I just think Lively gives them a live, energetic young body that can get up and down the floor. And he's getting better and better at his defensive rotations. So I think Derek Lively is not just underrated. He's one of those guys that he's far from hitting his ceiling. I think when it's all said and done, I think he can be very Tyson Chandler-like, and I think that's a big compliment.
DPOY, Tyson Chandler. No, that's an awesome compliment. It's funny because we went underrated from the same team because I was going to go PJ Washington.
I love it.
For stepping up the way he did. In the beginning of that series, the Thunder were just completely ignoring all of the role players and just loading up on Luka, Kyrie, and the lob threats of Gafford and Lively. And somebody had to make them pay. And I almost thought about throwing Derek Jones Jr. in here too, because both of those guys stepped up big time. They started knocking down their shots, forced the Thunder defense to spread back out, and let the lob game and let Luka like truly take over. But they couldn't have done it without Lively and PJ Washington finding their groove. So honestly, I think I'm just going to nominate both of those guys for an underrated player of the week.
You know what? Their production and what they do is so impactful because they allow Luka and Kyrie to cook because he's such a great finisher, Lively is. And then PJ Washington with his timely shot making. But the aspect of his game that I'm most impressed with, actually, it's not the shot making. It's been his defense, Brett. PJ Washington is playing defense at an all NBA caliber level. And that's something that I know I didn't expect that of him because I'd never seen any signs of it. Although, to be fair, he had been playing in Charlotte, and how many competitive games were they in?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Hopefully Charlotte can turn it around soon, but I don't see any competitive games for them in the near future either, unfortunately.
No
You know
doubt.
what? Let's get into it. We'll start out. We're gonna hop into these playoff games in a minute. I figure we'll talk about these game ones, but first, I thought we'd bring up some puppy prospects because Mo was telling me he was starting to look at consensus number one pick in the upcoming draft, Alexander Saar. I struggle with his first name. I apologize for that, by the way. And Mo, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on him?
What I'm impressed about it is he doesn't move like a 7-footer. And for anybody that hasn't seen him play, I'm not going to do a comp because I don't think he's on Wemby's level. But when you watch Wemby and you see Wemby do things that guys smaller do, I would say that Sar has similar ability. He moves like a much smaller player. He's just a little bit more raw than Wemby is. He's not nearly as polished, but he has so much potential. He's got great natural instincts. Gets up and down the floor very well. He's a good passer. He can be a consistent shooter. I think he still needs to work on his shot, but we are talking about a guy that's over 7 feet tall who's that skilled that I'm not sure you automatically play him at center. You might play him at the 4. I just think he has that kind of versatility. And I mean if he's drafted by the right team and you give him the right people around him to develop him and so he can hone his skills, I think he's going to be more than deserving of being the number one pick. I look at this draft and I think there are a lot of guys that are going to be very good players. I only see a couple of guys that I think are going to be stars or maybe even one day be superstars. And I think he's one of those guys that could be a star.
Yeah, I think you said hit it on the head with that one. Right destination really matters here. And I know obviously
Yes.
the Hawks have the first pick, and I'm not really a fan of that one with Sar. My concern is Trey Young ball is a lot of standing around watching him isolate. And the way he uses his bigs is just straight up screen and rollers, and he likes to toss up lobs. Well, the one thing about Sar's offensive game is he doesn't necessarily have great hands. Kind of in the same vein that we see, Rudy Gobert make an impact, but he doesn't have great hands. So it's something that can be work on. He can work on, but I think if he wants to reach his full offensive potential, he's going to have to they're going to have to accommodate the offense to just give him more touches, and I think they'll learn real quick that this dude is more than a lob threat.
And to piggyback on what you said, it does matter where he gets drafted because I think a lot of times you look at a guy and you go, well, he's 7'1". We want you to get down on the blocks. And that's not what he is. He's a 7'1" skilled player. And I would say that his offensive game, if I were going to describe it, I would say that he's a finesse player. So I think you should embrace the things he does well right now as a rookie, which means he moves well without the ball. He can step back and shoot the 3. He has a nice running hook shot. He gets up and down the floor like he's 6'4". I think you should embrace those skill set while he develops the rest of his game. He is not Derek Lively. They're completely different players. I know I was just giving Derek Lively a ton of credit. That's well deserved. But what I'm saying is Derek Lively is a little bit more rugged, a little bit more physical. I think Sar is more skilled, but he's also more of a finesse player.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of Derek Lively, why don't we use that to piggyback right into last night's game? We had Wolves Mavs game 1. Great game. Mavs pulled it out. What were your takeaways from that game 1, Mo?
My first takeaway was as I'm watching the game, and then you look at the box score, I was like, I knew they were terrible from 3, but they won that game shooting only 25% from 3. And that kind of blew me away. It also shows you how effective Dallas is when Luka or Kyrie, especially Luka, gets downhill and you try to play drop coverage on him because he'll take advantage of that. He will hold the ball an extra second and a half longer right before he goes up and lobs it to his big to finish. And I think that's something that Minnesota's going to have to recognize, and they're going to have to get out of drop coverage or at least mix it up because Luka's too. The worst guy to play drop coverage on is Luka. I'll make it that simple. You can't do that because one, he's going to dominate the ball, and if you drop on him, he's going to find somebody, or he's going to get the guy that's on his hip in trouble and create a foul. So I think they've got to change the way they defend him I think they also have to change the matchups. Like, I know Ant wanted to guard Kyrie. If you don't want Anthony Edwards tired in the fourth quarter, don't have him guarding Kyrie Irving in the first half. That's a bad matchup. I think Jaden McDaniels would be a better matchup for Kyrie. And even though Luka is a more prolific scorer and more of a physical player, I think that might be a better matchup. And I would say that in spot instances for Ant in terms of his rest. I'm blitzing Luka. I'm blitzing Kyrie. I know their role players have been effective, but I'm going to challenge guys like PJ Washington. I'm going to challenge guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. I'm going to challenge them to make shots. I need Tim Hardaway Jr. to score 18 or 20. I need PJ Washington to put 20 or 30. I'm going to challenge them. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to let Kyrie and Luka play one-on-one. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and I agree with this too. And to kind of poke the hornet's nest by saying I got Kyrie.
He did.
Like we can say a lot of things about Kyrie, but there's no denying that man's talent on the basketball court. And a motivated Kyrie is a scary Kyrie, and I completely agree with you. And Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, just blitz the screen, get it out of their hands, make the role players beat you. And if they do, if Derrick Jones Jr. scores 20 on you, like, it's not really anything you can do about that because you have to pick your poison. So I'm going to let Derrick Jones try to get to 20 before I let Luka get to 20.
Right.
And I got to address it too. Draymond talked about this game, and he said, absolutely agree with that. Draymond decided to talk about this game. Fair enough. He just thinks that they need more Kyle Anderson, and his solution was to bench Rudy Gobert for Kyle Anderson. And genuinely, I saw that, and I was like, Dre, I love you, but man, that to me, that is a terrible idea. Like,
yeah,
Rudy Gobert, obviously, the Mavs had some success against the drop coverage, but at the same time, Rudy saved a lot of baskets that game. Like, he was definitely a presence. So I just don't get what we're going with there. Like, if anything, Draymond should understand what Rudy's doing by playing free safety. This is the same guy that had to guard Tony Allen just to protect the rim. So you would think Dre would understand what Rudy and the Wolves are doing. So I didn't understand that criticism, honestly.
No, and look, that take it's a good example of why Draymond's never going to be a head coach. That's a terrible take. If you want to change up the matchups, if you're saying, well, I don't want to put Ant on Luka because Luka is very clever and adept at drawing fouls. I understand that. And I'm not talking about a heavy dose. I'm just talking about a change up so Ant can get a breather here and there. If you want to change up the rosters, you can bring in Kyle Anderson earlier and you can put Kyle Anderson on Luka, who, let's be honest, all jokes aside, Kyle Anderson and Luka, they're about the same speed, right? They're about the same speed. And Kyle Anderson has the size to where Luka can't just shiver him off the way he can do Ant, the way he can do a McDaniel. So I think you can try out putting Kyle Anderson on him. That way you can take Ant off of him. I think you have to give Luka different looks, because if you give him the same look, he will figure it out and he'll eventually make you pay. So I think you have to keep Luka guessing. With Kyrie, it's real simple. If Kyrie's aggressive, there's not much you can do. It's a weird thing to say. And it's funny because you're talking about what they did last series versus the Nuggets. Jamal Murray is a terrific player. Great shot creation, great shot maker. And he's actually he's a physically bigger player than Kyrie Irving. But we're talking about levels. Kyrie Irving is on another level from Jamal Murray. And it's not a knock against Jamal Murray. This is just me giving Kyrie Irving his flowers. If Kyrie Irving is aggressive and he comes out with the mindset tonight, I'm taking at least 20 shots, that's a problem for the Timberwolves. I thought in game one, the scary part was he wasn't settling for contested jump shots. Kyrie was attacking the basket. And that's what's scary. If you get Kyrie Irving going downhill, that's a recipe for disaster for your defense, no matter who's back there.
And it's weird with Kyrie. It really is pick your poison. Like, if he starts being aggressive, honestly, the best thing you can do is let him try to score. Because as soon as you overreact to the scoring, Well, guess what? Now you're just freeing up other guys. You're going to free up Luka for a one-on-one. You're going to free up some shooters for a one-on-one. When it comes to Kyrie, I would blitz it to try to get out of his hand, but it's just so tough with him because on one hand you don't want to overreact to his scoring outburst, but at the same time it can sink you. So it just shows the predicament, like how an all-time great like scorer like Kyrie and the trouble that they can put you in.
And not to mention, unlike Luka, Kyrie moves a lot off the ball, right? So that's another way that if you're going to guard him, that you're going to use up and expand a lot of energy. I would blitz him and show him different looks. But actually, Brett, I think my best defense against Kyrie would be to make him work on the other end, right? You need to attack him to make him play some defense. And you do have guys that can do that. If he's caught on an island against Jalen McDaniels, Jaden McDaniels can overpower Kyrie. If he's caught on a switch on Ant, the same thing. I actually think the key to this series is really simple. Yes, you have to stop Luka and Kyrie if you're the Wolves. But if you're the Wolves and you're going to win this series, Karl-Anthony Towns cannot just fall in love with his jump shot. He's got to take advantage of being guarded by smaller players and punish them every time. If Karl-Anthony Towns plays the way he plays against Denver, Minnesota will win this series. It'll be in 7, but they'll win this series. If he's a lesser version and more of a jump shooter versus what he was against the Nuggets, I think Minnesota's going to lose the series. I picked the Mavericks in 7, and I'm saying that strictly on the fact that I think that ultimately, no matter what the matchup is, I don't think anybody can control what Luka does in terms of space, in terms of the way he paces the game. Like he'll make or miss some shots, but you can't speed him up, Brett. And he does everything at his pace. He's very clever. Somebody made a comment this morning, and I thought that's really smart because they said Luka's unique. They wanted to say Luka's like Joker, but a perimeter player, but then they made a better comment. They said Luka's basically Jamal Murray and Joker rolled up into one player. And I was like, I like that comment. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Cat always seemed like the X factor for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's got to take smart shots and stay out of foul trouble. And I like Cat, I really do. But there's one thing that bothers me about, maybe it's just Timberwolves fans, because I like to stay on Twitter and just see what people are saying about the game as I'm watching it. And I'll watch Cat commit a dumb foul, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's just the inexperience." He's been in the league for 9 years. How much more experience does this man need? Is it going to click in year 12 and he's going to become this different player all of a sudden? Like, I like Karl-Anthony Towns, but it always seems like it comes back to his IQ and just his decision-making being the X factor for that Timberwolves team. When he plays smart, plays aggressive, and stays out of foul trouble, they win a lot of games. When he falls in love with his jumper, it's not falling. He gets frustrated and he starts committing stupid fouls and making bad choices. Then that's really when they start getting into trouble. So I like Cat, and it always seems like you could tell how a Timberwolves game is going to go just by watching him.
I think in many ways, Brett, you just summed up not just this series, but his entire career. Like, I remember when the NBA was trying to make a rivalry of Cat and Joel Embiid, and Embiid basically just kind of Hulk smashed him. Like it's not really a rivalry, but I get it. If you look at his talent, and this is where we get into these debates about talent versus actual impact, skill versus actual production. Karl-Anthony Towns, and I've said this before, he's not just a great shooter for a big man. He's a great shooter, period. Like there are two guards who don't shoot as well as Karl-Anthony Towns. He's that good a shooter. That said, you're 6'11", almost 7 feet tall, with post skills. You can't settle for jump shots all the time. And I'm with you 100%. I don't care if it's with Anthony Edwards or when it was with Jimmy Butler in the past. Many, many times the barometer for whether or not the Timberwolves would have ultimate success, it has a lot to do with the mindset of Karl-Anthony Towns, Brett. I think you're 100% right. If I were going to describe Towns, you know how we talk about his talent? I'm talking about his mindset. I would say that he seems a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Aloof. Does that make sense? Like a little aloof. Like we talk about guys that have that dog in him. I've seen Cat have games where he looks like he's an all NBA player, and then I've seen him follow it up with with games where you're like, I don't even know how this guy starts. He doesn't have a middle ground. With all that talent, he's so many different extremes. And look, I really do think, as gifted as Ant is, as terrific as Rudy is at protecting the rim and rebounding and deflecting shots, if Towns doesn't bring his A game, they can't win this series.
No, I 100% agree. And saying the Cavs did fire JB Bickerstaff. That
was coming.
We knew it was coming, and I'm just curious on where they go next. It almost feels like the built-in answer is Kenny Atkinson because he has experience with some of the guys on that team. I know he coached Jared Allen, and I think there was another guy on that Nets team that I just cannot think about off the top of my head right now. But I'm curious on where they go and who they think is going to be able to push them to the next level that, JB couldn't.
They should hire JJ Redick because if JJ Redick has a couple of bad seasons, they won't fire him right away. Like I know, JJ, you get that Lakers job, you could be one and done, bro. I'm just saying, I know your podcast partner's on there, but anything other than a championship, you're gonna catch holy hell. That's just the reality of it. Someone said there was this thing where they said they see where JJ Redick could be very Pat Riley like, and I'm like, slow down. Like right now, I would settle for he could be Doc Rivers like. Just get us back to, because Doc can get you to a conference finals. Doc can get you to the big game. He might not win it, but I would settle for that right now. That Lakers coaching search, I wonder. My gut feeling is, Brett, it doesn't feel like a true search. Like they're interviewing various people, but I feel like they're already leaning towards Redick, and it bothers me somewhat because you see a guy like Sam Cassell, who's played in the league for a long time, terrific player, been an assistant coach for a number of years. When is a guy like Sam Cassell actually going to? There you go. Gene feels the same way. When is a guy like Sam Cassell going to get a shot? Because that's the guy I want to be the next Lakers coach. And my gut feeling is it won't be him.
And that would be, to me, it's just too ironic, right? Because you get mad at Darvin Ham for being make bucks like, yeah. It's funny. The Lakers fans will get mad at, Darvin Ham for, making bad mistakes and just rookie mistakes because he has no experience, coaching. And then they want him to go out and hire JJ Redick, who is also a first-time head coach,
right?
Who will probably make similar mistakes that Darvin Ham did. So it just seems like a really bad marriage there. Sam Cassell to the Cavs. Honestly, I would enjoy that. Give this man his chance finally.
Good for the Cavs if they can get Sam Cassell. Good for them if it actually happens. Look, and right, what do we talk about when you bring in a new head coach? Well, the first thing you have to establish is, do your star players not just look that they have to? Do they have the coach have the respect of your star players? Right? How does that work? How does that dynamic work with a JJ Redick and LeBron James? I just don't see that ending well. Why not bring in a guy like Sam Cassell? Although Gene might be right, he might be heading to the Cavs. And look, if I'm Sam Cassell and I had a choice between the two jobs, while I know the Lakers job is more prolific, I would go with the Cavs job too.
Yeah, and honestly, that might cause issues with the rest of the team with JJ going to the Lakers because his other teammates, because he might just favor LeBron. And of course, some of his other teammates might not like it, and they'll be like, well, they just hired his podcast buddy, and now he's favoring him all the time. And it just might not be a good look for the rest of the team if they just bring in LeBron's podcast buddy.
It's a horrible look. And how many times have we heard, well, LeBron doesn't want, he doesn't want people to think he has anything to do with the coaching exchange or the hunt for a coach. Well, of course he doesn't want people to think he has anything to do with it, but anybody with common sense knows if LeBron James is on your team and your coach gets fired, who helped get him fired? LeBron James. If LeBron James says this guy could be a coach or somebody I like or somebody I'm thinking about, what do you think the Lakers are going to do? They're going to give JJ Redick a second and third look. I'm not saying it's a lock that Redick becomes the head coach of the Lakers, but I'll be very, very surprised if JJ Redick is not the coach of the Lakers.
That's fair, and I do like this point. Sam Cassell would do wonders for the growth of Darius Garland. Sam Cassell was a straight baller when he played, and he's got a lot of things that he could teach a guy like Garland.
Yeah,
LeBron going to coach the team no matter who they hire. That could very
well,
well.
Yeah, that's true because the only time he never can get away with that was in Miami. So yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
Yeah, I say he tried, but they wouldn't get rid of Spo. But
No.
I'll say, yeah, but of course, we had the other Eastern Conference games, and that came down to one question: to foul or not to foul. Obviously, Pacers and Celtics game 1, and I don't know how else to put it, but the Celtics I don't know if the Celtics won that game or more so the Pacers just flat out blew it down the stretch. We had Tyrese Halliburton losing the ball out of bounds. He said he thinks he dribbled it off his knee, but you watch the replay, he just flat out lost the handle.
Right.
But Tatum misses a couple. He missed the shot. Tatum gets the rebound. He misses the putback. And comes to the controversial play. We sideline out of bounds. Great defense by Jaylen Brown. He knocks the ball out of bounds. Except it bounces off Siakam last. So now the Celtics have an inbound. Jaylen Brown catches a big corner 3 to tie the game and send it to overtime. Now, Mo, I want to hear your thoughts on this final play because I certainly have my own.
Are you talking about
Siakam make the right call to not foul Jaylen Brown on that corner 3?
Yeah, he did. Look, if you're gonna foul, I would have fouled like if they were in the back court before you can even get into a shooting motion. But yeah, I think he made the right call. What was he gonna do? Because had he fouled him, you're just sending Jaylen Brown to the line to shoot 3 free throws and hoping that he misses them, right? But that's such a tough in the moment play, and I think Rick Carlisle thought he made the right decision because the shot that Jaylen Brown got off, Brett, that wasn't even his natural shooting motion. That was almost like a trick shot. So the guy made an improbable shot. You tip your hat to him, and they end up going into overtime. In a game where Indiana had done almost everything right, they did everything wrong in the last minute of the game. Even Siakam on the inbounds pass, he took the worst angle you could ever take. What are you doing? You don't run away. You run towards the ball. He ran away. He actually gave the defender an angle to where he can get her hand. I didn't understand what he was doing. That was horrible. It was a heartbreaking loss if you were rooting for the Pacers. I'm going to give Boston credit for this. They found a way to get the game into overtime. And once they were in overtime, they were clearly the better team. I think going into overtime, Indiana never recovered from the shock of Jaylen Brown making that 3. I think the inbounds play and then Brown hitting that 3, I think it took everything out of them because in the overtime, Jason Tatum woke up and he became the best player in the series again, and he scored 10 points in overtime, and Boston won. It's a tough loss, and it's one of those kind of losses where however this series ends going forward, you're going to say, man, had Indiana won game 1, it could have set the pace or the tone for the rest of the series. But now here you are down 0-1, and now they're in game 2, and the Celtics look like, they mean business so far in game 2. I'm not saying that means the series is over, but I would say if Boston goes up to Indiana 2-0, it means that in terms of who's going to win the series, that's over.
Yeah, I agree. Tatum did miss some good looks down the stretch. He was not great. But, in overtime, he figured it out, outscored the Pacers. He had 10. So at least he bounced back nicely in overtime.
He did. I mean, he was 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter. He was getting ready to be the reason why Boston lost in the fourth quarter. That's how bad he was. And 3 plays alters everything. Brown gets them into overtime, and then Tatum takes over from there by scoring 10 points in overtime. So I like I said, I'll give him credit for everything he did in the first half and what he did in the overtime. But it's a really weird thing how narratives can switch. Had Indiana won, Brett, the narrative today would have been, I don't know if Jason Tatum's that guy. There he goes again. You know what I mean? He was 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter. That's really on the Pacers. I'm giving the Celtics credit for what they did in overtime, but I think the Pacers clearly gave that game away.
Yeah, and here's the thing with that too. When it comes down to that last play, right? And this is something I kind of questioned when it happened. So obviously Pascal took a bad angle and got really picked off by Derek White on that screen. I'm curious why the Pacers didn't talk about this in the huddle, because to me, that was a perfect example. The switch just switched. TJ McConnell, get out to Jaylen Brown.
Right.
Pascal, just take Derek White. Worst case scenario, White slips backdoor, gets an easy layup. Oh, well, guess what? You're up 1. You have a timeout to take it at midcourt. So to me, this must not have been discussed in the huddle, because I'm telling them in the huddle, guys, if they run a screening action and, something like this happens, like we're just switching everything. And if we give up 2, oh, well, I don't care. I don't want to give up a 3. But Pascal fell 2 steps behind, and he made the right call not to foul Jaylen Brown.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, coming into that game, anybody want to take a guess at Jaylen Brown's percentage on corner threes? Here, I'll give you it. He was shooting from the best corner, which is the one he shot out of. He was shooting 20% on corner threes going into that game in the playoffs. So if anybody questions if Pascal made the right call, let me ask you this. Do you want to put a 75% free throw shooter on the line for 3? Or take a chance on a shot that he's only shooting 20% on, and he's not shooting out of a natural shooting motion at all.
Right. And look, to be fair, I think that's why in the post-game interview, Rick Carlisle said, "Hey, that's on me." I think it's pretty much about the things that you just covered. That was that talked about in the timeout, because that would have been my mindset. I would have told everybody they need 3. They need 3. Don't worry about somebody cutting back door. If they cut back door, let them cut back door. But do not lose contact with anybody going out to 3. If you have to get a screen, automatic switch. I don't even care if there's a size advantage. I want you to switch everything. I don't care if the guy behind you cuts back door. What does it matter to me? We're going to be ahead if they take a 2. So I think Rick Carlisle took blame for that. Maybe he didn't make that clearer to them in the moment with everything going on. But look, I think Rick Carlisle is a stand-up guy. Heading into game 2 tonight, I just wanted to know if the Pacers were still dwelling on game 1, and I hope they weren't. It looked like, at least in the first quarter, they weren't. Obviously, Boston turned it up a notch, and I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, the Celtics are up 10 at half.
Yeah, well, I just took a peek, and it's a 4-point game right now. Since this tweet, it's last time I just looked, and it's 70-66 Celtics. So Pacers are still fighting. They're not letting it get to them.
If Siakam gets the ball at the elbow, and he's just being guarded straight up, he's going to light you up. Once he catches the ball at the elbow, that's his sweet spot. He just goes to work on you. I don't care if it's Tatum. I don't care if it's Brown. Even though Tatum is about his height, I think Siakam's a little bit bigger than him. He's obviously clearly bigger than Brown is. Too quick for Al Horford. So I think it's great that Siakam is bringing them back. I think they're still going to need more from Miles Turner. And you still want, if you're Indiana, you still want an aggressive Halliburton, because when Halliburton's aggressive, it makes everybody else that much better.
Yeah, and that's the matchup that they had, and it's why I'm not shocked Pascal's on fire. They had matched up Horford on Siakam, and I looked at it, I'm just like, that's just a little too slow for that. I love Al Horford, but this isn't, 25-year-old Al Horford. This is like 35-year-old Al Horford, and he cannot keep up with Pascal.
Let's be honest. What Boston needs right now is they need Atlanta Hawks Al Horford. If they had that Al Horford, I think he could actually guard Siakam. That Al Horford was a great defender, and he could give you buckets on the other end. The current Al Horford, still a really good veteran presence. It's a tough matchup because Siakam can rock him with the pump fake, and that makes him stagger back. And before you know it, he's already raising up for his jump shot. It's a tough matchup.
Alex asks, "What is the missing piece for the Pacers?" And that's a good question.
A healthy Ben Mathurin. We almost forget that Mathurin isn't playing. If you have Ben Mathurin, then you've got another guy coming off your bench that can give you 16 to 20 points a game on a given night. So I don't think the Pacers are hurting for talent. I think they just don't have their full complement of players. Think about it. You got Hallie, who's going to give you 10 assists, 18 to 20 points a night. Then you've got guys like Siakam, who's another guy that can give you 20 a night. I don't think they need more talent. I like the team they currently have. I know I did ask this question to you, Brett, before. In a tight game, every team has a default go-to guy, right? Who is the Pacers' go-to guy in a default? Because some would say Siakam. I think it's still Halliburton. Unless Siakam's on a heater and he's just been in one of those zones, that makes sense to me then. But Halliburton, because if he beats his man off the dribble, what does he do, Brett? He opens up an opportunity for somebody else. So I think that when he's aggressive, they're a much better team.
It almost feels like with the Pacers, they do really well, almost in like a tightrope act, and they're both kind of act like the closers, in which it'll almost all play into matchup. I saw Halliburton and Siakam, both take over against the Bucks, but if it's a weaker team against weaker guards, you'll see, Hallie be more aggressive, but a team with weaker forwards, you almost see them start deferring to Pascal. I think if they really were to trade and add somebody, like a more defensive or minded, maybe number one, like a number one guy might be nice, but I don't know if that guy is going to be available for them because they just used a lot of assets to trade for Pascal. So I think the best thing that they could do right now is keep what they got and hope for internal growth.
Yeah, I mean, look at guys like Nembhard. Nembhard, to me, you watch him at times, you can see this kid has scoring ability. So maybe they can run more plays for him, give him more of an opportunity. I think that Nesmith, who's a terrific wing defender, I think Nesmith has the potential to be a double figure scorer. Not 20, but could I see Nesmith giving you 14 or 15? Absolutely. So I think what they have is balance. But if you're asking me the question of who can go get you 25 when you need it or go get a bucket, the most natural bucket getter on that team, he's actually hurt, and that would be Mathurin. And the next guy would be Siakam. I don't know if I see Siakam as a number one option. I've always thought of him, if you're thinking in terms of title contenders, he's a 2 or a 3. And I know Halliburton's a point guard, and you could say he might be the engine and makes things go. But I think that you need a scorer to play off of, somebody that he can rely on. And so I guess that role is what Siakam's role is. Do you I guess what you're saying, Brett, is you don't think they need to go out and get like a veteran and bring him off the bench like a DeRozan? Could DeRozan help Indiana in a different role coming off the bench?
Yeah, to me that one's kind of tough because it almost feels like they definitely have enough scoring on this team. So it almost feels like they more so could go and maybe go out and get like a two-way wing, another one to put next to Pascal and just run like Tyrese, Pascal. If they add in, let's say, like, I'm not going to say they're going to get them, but maybe like a Mikal Bridges that, kind of can help clamp down on the wings and a Miles Turner. I don't think they need to go out. I'll say I don't think they need to go out and pay for more offense. It almost feels like if they're going to go out and make a trade, really aim for fit, find the best two-way wing you can get and work with that.
No, I like that call. Look, you read my mind. The first person that came to my mind was Mikal Bridges because he's an elite wing defender and he can get you 18 or 20 a night, but he's not a volume scorer. He doesn't need the ball in his hands at all time. I think he would be a great fit in Indiana. The thing about Indiana is this, though. They seem to play by committee, and it seems to work. I think during the regular season, Brett, they had like 6 or 7 guys that average in double figures. That's just the way they play. I like that about them, but I think in crunch time, you do have to have that guy where you can go like, can you get me a bucket? That would be my only concern. Although I do think Mathurin is more than capable of that. I like Rick Carlisle's system, Brett. It reminds me in a lot of ways. even though there were different styles, it's very similar to Steve Nash's Suns, right? They they don't go, well, you're Amari, it's all about you. They make it about whoever's hot, whoever's open, the ball just keeps moving, the bodies just keep moving. And I love that. Like when TJ McConnell comes in, and the offense doesn't get hurt because he can kill you with those little short jump shots. And then the defense goes up because he's a dog at the point of attack. So I actually think if you look at most NBA teams top to bottom, Indiana doesn't have a lot of star power, but they're probably as balanced as any team in the NBA.
KD to the Pacers.
Alex, I love that idea, but you're right. It's not going to happen. KD, if he should leave Phoenix, he's going to go to a big market.
And KD, I love KD, but he really likes to play at a slower pace, and he might start running out of gas if he tries to play at the tempo of these young cats up in Indy. Honestly,
they will wear him out. Yeah, he might ask for a trade just because, like, I just can't keep up. Nah. I think that Mikal Bridges is a good fit, even though he's on New York. I'm just talking about fit because of course the Knicks are going to hold on to him. OG Anunoby would have been a good fit, somebody of that nature. I don't think they need a guy that can drop 25 a night. I think you make a great point, Brett. They have enough scoring, and I could be wrong. My concern with them is, who do you go to? Who do you run a pin down for in late game situations? And the truth is, if you look at their system, it's a mixture of the Princeton system and then a mixture of what Mike D'Antoni did in Phoenix, where everybody's live, everybody's a potential shooter. Like when you play the Pacers, almost everybody on the floor can shoot the three.
No, absolutely. And I think that'll be interesting to see what adjustments and everything are going to be made for Game 4. But why don't we talk about some awards? It's award week for the NBA, and I'm here for it. I love it. So, I'm not sure why it's doing that, but weird. Okay, but NBA All-Defensive Team were announced. Rudy Gobert, Victor Wembanyama, Bam Adebayo, AD, Herb Jones for first team. Second team was Caruso, Drew Holiday, Jaden McDaniels, Suggs, and Derek White. Now, honestly, like, I saw that and I was so happy, and the biggest reason I was happy is because I guessed all NBA teams like a month ago and I got all 10 names right, and I was like, yes! I just guessed the team names wrong. I put guards on the first team, and I should have figured that wasn't going to happen anymore. But
so I'm good with you, and I agree with you about the All NBA. Although it was weird, right? Because four of the top five were bigs, and then you had
Herb
Williams. I'm sorry, that was so odd. Like, I'm good with Wemby there. I'm good with Rudy there. I'm not sure, and I'm a big fan, but I don't know if I would have had Bam first team. I would have. I think a guy like Derek White or even Alex Caruso could have got some love for first team. I'm not angry because everybody that I thought would make All NBA defense made it. I just think that I would consider giving Caruso or Derek White a little bit more love this particular season. But a great team. I love everybody that they put on the All NBA teams, first and second teams. I'm good.
Yeah, it almost feels like we should have expected this because at the end of the day, the most important real estate to guard on the court is still the rim. And so as soon as they had it went positionless, part of me kind of guessed like, oh, I'm not sure how many guards we're going to see on the All-NBA team going forward. Like, perimeter defense is obviously important, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be more important to, keep the rim protected. And so, we've seen that throughout history. So I think it's going to be tough going forward for guards to really get on that first team.
Isn't that strange though? It hasn't changed. It was always skewed towards bigs in the 80s, in the 90s, but here we are in 2024 and it's still skewed more towards bigs. Like, you can probably count the guards that it kind of interrupted bigs winning Defensive Player of the Year. I know your guy Sidney Moncrief did it twice. I believe he did it twice. Jordan did it once. Jordan did it once. Gary Payton did it once. Draymond Green did it once. Did Kawhi Leonard do it twice? Maybe once. I'm not sure. I think he did it twice. My point is, it's very rare now that perimeter players. I mean, they get honored as great defenders, but usually now DPOY, that's going to be one of your bigs. It's become even more so in the current era.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, my favorite part about all these votes are, though, and I looked at the one for MVP, and the other guys' list for MVP didn't bother me. Like the guys that got random votes were like DeMar DeRozan, which I thought was odd, but I was like, all right, whatever. But this DPOY list, this other guy's list, is wildin'. So I'm not sure why this is all blue. I apologize for that, but like some of these names on here, we got Domantas Sabonis, you got Bobby Portis. I didn't think De'Aaron Fox played all NBA caliber defense.
or Sabonis.
Right.
Come on.
Like, Mo, this is insane to me that Sabonis now got a DPOY vote, MVP votes, all defensive team votes, and I'm just sitting here like, is he a voter? Because I can't think of anybody who thought that he's apparently just the best two-way player in the league that we're not thinking about.
So somebody's throwing away their vote. Like, if you vote for De'Aaron Fox, if you vote for Sabonis for all NBA defense, you're literally just throwing away your vote. And you know, neither one of those guys. Like, there's Harrison Barnes has a better shot to make all NBA defense, or Davion Mitchell, who actually plays defense at a high level for Sacramento, one of the one or two guys that does that. And I don't even think Davion Mitchell got a vote, did he? He probably didn't even get a vote.
No.
But those two guys did. So I'm with you. You have a great way of finding out. Like, we know who's going to be at the top in terms of getting votes, but it's those really weird, obscure votes like what you just found with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. The MVP voting was the same way. It was just as weird.
Yeah, and the other name that caught me off guard, and honestly, this straight up feels like a legacy vote, DeJounte Murray. And people go, well, DeJounte Murray plays defense, yeah, in San Antonio.
Right.
3 years ago he might have, but his defense hasn't been good in Atlanta. And that might just be a product of the system and the players around him. But let's face it, DeJounte Murray should not be getting all defensive votes. This just felt like a legacy vote. This just felt like we're putting Kobe in the All-Star game in 2016 because he's retiring. This felt like we're putting DeJounte Murray on an all-defensive ballot because at one point in time, he played defense.
It's like a credit vote. Like, he had built up some credit. Like, you remember him on San Antonio. I'm like, we all do. We also remember him on Atlanta. And if you watched DeJounte Murray in Atlanta, I thought he was going to have an impact on them, and it seems like they had more of an impact on him. He adopted to what they did. DeJounte Murray became a volume shooter and totally forgot all his defensive principles. So, yeah, I don't understand why he would get a vote for defensive. It's some of these people just waste their votes. And like you said, is it a legacy vote, or is that particular writer just very close to the family?
Yeah, that's a great question. And then, of course, all NBA came out. First team, Giannis, Luka, Shea, Jokic, Tatum. Second team, Brunson, Davis, Durant, Edwards, Kawhi. And then, of course, Booker, Curry, Halliburton, James, and Sabonis for third team. So I don't actually have an issue with any of that. I know some people are trying to make an argument for Jaylen Brown to make it, and I've seen people try to make arguments for like Tyrese Maxey, but those, honestly, I think they picked the right 15 guys in this scenario.
Look, I have no problem with the team. I like Tyrese Maxey. I like Jaylen Brown. I'm when you say they should make it, my first thoughts are, who are they going to knock off? And then you look at the guys that are on the team, and I'm like, I don't really like. If you wanted to nitpick, I guess you could say maybe Tyrese Halliburton could get knocked off for Maxey, but that's a maybe. I wouldn't do it. Like, if I have to go maybe, I'm not doing it. So I have no problem. It's funny because we argued about this beforehand because I was totally convinced that somehow, some way, Jalen Brunson had a shot to make the first team. I did. I really thought he had a shot to make the first team, and he didn't. It's not life or death, but I thought within the framework of this season, what he did, I keep reminding people, remember, because a lot of these people keep saying like, well, he didn't have Julius Randle. Right. But when he had Julius Randle before he got hurt, they were in 5th place. Julius Randle goes down. That guy takes him to 2nd place because he didn't need Julius Randle. Once Julius Randle was gone, guess what? Other people got to touch the ball. They became a better team. They became a better defensive team. I'm only saying that because I'm trying to lead up to the interview or the conversation that Kevin Garnett had with Stephen A. Smith. When Stephen A. Smith, who was a Knicks fan, said, do we need another player? Do we need another one, a number one option to play alongside Jalen Brunson? And Kevin Garnett got outraged and said, Julius Randle, what about Julius Randle? He's a 25-10 guy. He's a tough guard. He added a 3 to his game. And I'm like, KD, whoa, you're one of the all-time greats. Julius Randle shot 31% from 3. That's not an add-on. That's a detraction. His career shooting percentage from 3 is 33%. If you shoot 33% from 3, that means you're capable of making a 3, but that also means your ass shouldn't be shooting 3s. He didn't add on. And playoff Julius Randle is a real thing. He's only played in 15 playoff games. But the sample size I have of Julius Randle, that's who he is. Under 40% from the field, under 30% from 3, 4 turnovers a game, can't stop a nosebleed. That guy you want to hold on to? I don't get it.
And the issue is people like look at, and this is why like the eye test and everything is still so important, right? Because you look at Julius Randle's number and you go, 25-10, that looks awesome. This dude must be really good. Right. And then you watch how he gets it, right? And it's almost to the detriment of the rest of the team because he's going to catch the ball. He's going to grind the offense down to a halt so you can watch him ISO. But then when he does ISO, he doesn't take great shots in isolation. They're always seemingly contested. So it's one of those things that, like on paper, 25-10, awesome, terrific. But then you actually watch how he gets those points and you're just like, oh, they need to ship this dude out tomorrow and they'd get better. And we saw them get better without him the second half of the season. So
I've heard all the arguments if they had Randle, and I'm like, you do realize had they had Randle that they wouldn't have beat the Sixers. They would have lost. That he would have shot them right out of the series. Like you have to know who you're actually dealing with and stop looking at those damn numbers. Stop doing that. There's a basic principle. On bad teams, there's always going to be a leading scorer. On middle of the road teams, there's a leading scorer. The Knicks were in 5th place with Julius Randle. I'm not saying that's terrible, but he literally was holding them back. Once he was gone, we found out that, oh my God, Dante DiVincenzo with multiple shot opportunities, he can average 16 a game. Josh Hart playing 30 minutes or more a game, he can be productive. Look what you're getting from OG. Without Julius Randle, and it's strange to say this because obviously Jalen Brunson is a ball-dominant player, but even with Jalen Brunson being how he is, the ball moved 10 times better than it ever moved with Julius Randle. I'm sorry, but if I'm a Knicks fan, I don't know how you're like, man, if we get Randle back, look out. I'm thinking, get rid of Randle. Get rid of Randle. Go out. And you don't have to get a big name. You don't have to go get Paul George. You don't have to try to get I wouldn't take Zach LaVine anyway, but the guy that everybody seems to like, and they talk about him almost like he's a role player, and he's not. You just brought him up, the young man from the Brooklyn Nets, because he's such a versatile player. And he's also another Villanova Wildcat. Why not add another Wildcat to the Knicks? It's already the Wildcats there. Add another one. He would be a perfect fit because he's got that dog mentality. He can give you some points, but he's not a volume scorer. I would take that trade-off for what Julius Randle brings to the table. And you can look at the numbers and go, well, yes, he's never going to average 25-10. He's not. But I think that in terms of chemistry and impact, it will be much better, especially on both ends of the floor. That's my take. And by the way, this isn't me saying that Julius Randle's not a good player. This is me saying that the Knicks don't need Julius Randle. There are more than a few teams out there that value the services of Julius Randle. I'm just saying that the Knicks don't need him.
And it's funny because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the Nets should keep Bridges and build around Bridges." Mikal Bridges is 28. He's not.
Yeah, they don't realize that. They don't
building
realize that.
age. Like this
Right.
man is getting older. Like he's at that age where you want to see him on a contender. He's not 18. Like this man's a 28-year-old veteran at this point. So
And a
I
good
hope
player, Brad. But let me ask you this: do you think Bridges is the kind of player that you build around?
no. I think Mikal Bridges, watching him play as a number one, he's a volume ISO scorer who doesn't have the playmaking to make his teammates around him better. So he needs to go somewhere that is in need of isolation scoring, but at the same time has a good passer that can, still unlock the rest of the team because that playmaking is definitely not Mikal Bridges' game.
No, I think Mikal Bridges is a finisher. I think he's effective when he's part of the cog, not the guy that you're running the offense through. The truth of the matter is as bad as the Nets are, Mikal Bridges is even on that team is not their best offensive player. It's actually Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas is a natural scorer. Now, do I think that Cam Thomas is the kind of guy you build around? No, but I do think the value in a guy like Cam Thomas, Brett, is he is the prototypical Brett instant offense off the bench guy. On a title contender or playoff contender, would you not want a guy like Cam Thomas as your sixth or seventh man coming in there and could just instantly get on a heater like he can? Like he has value that way. But no, he's not somebody you build around. The Nets are a weird team because if you look at them, they have a lot of players that your team, the Bucks, would like to have. My team, the Lakers, like to have. There are a lot of good players. Like you'd go, like, yeah, I'll take Cam Thomas. I'll take Cam Johnson. Would you like to have what's the young man that plays center for them? I love that kid.
Oh, Claxton?
Yes, a big that can run the floor like a gazelle. Can get up and down the floor, rebound, block shots. Like who would not want a guy with those kind of young legs? I'd love to have a guy like Claxton. They have a lot of good players. What they don't have is they have no one that you could put together and go, this is our core. This is who we're building around. They don't have that. They have a bunch of guys that if you had the guy, you'd be set for life. If they jettison the star right into Brooklyn right now, you'd have a number one option and you would have all the role players he needs around him and they could go from the jump. The problem is they don't have the star.
Hey, that's all right. I'm sure Ben Simmons will be back better than ever again for like the 5th season in a row. Slowly,
Do we even talk about Ben Simmons? No, Ben Simmons don't want to play basketball no more. He don't want to play basketball no more.
No, he's out of the league after next year when his contract's up. There's no way anybody. But speaking of being the guy, Mo, we're talking about Tatum earlier, and I don't get something, right? And this is from ESPN. So Jason Tatum has this 33, 13, and 6 closeout game. He shoots 11 of 25. And the headline is inefficient. Is Tatum doing enough? Anthony Edwards in a closeout game, 6 of 24, 16 points. I'm not saying he was bad. He still had a great impact on defense and his playmaking was on, but Ant-Man's case for the face of the NBA. And this is mind-boggling to me, right? Because you're calling Tatum inefficient for shooting 11 of 25, which is, granted, is inefficient, but he won that game. Anthony Edwards wins a game where he shoots 6 of 24. He is just insanely inefficient. That man just went full Kobe in the 2010 Finals Game 7, except he didn't get the free throws that Kobe did.
Right.
And he's the face of the league. Now, I'm not saying that Anthony Edwards isn't going to be the face of the league. That man's very entertaining. He's got great marketability. He's got everything you'd want out of the face of the league. But I don't know about you, Mo, but this just bothers me with the inconsistencies of these, headlines and this reporting. Like, if you're going to call one guy inefficient for shooting 11-25, call the guy who shot 6-24 inefficient. Like, let's be consistent. And
I
I feel
agree.
like Jason Tatum is almost at this point, he's almost underrated because of how many people just hate on him to such an extent. Like, the way people make you hear about Tatum, you would think that he's some fringe like role player who's just a terrible basketball player getting 20 shots a game. This man's consistently all NBA first team. So, and I don't know, maybe I'm sounding too much like Kyle here, but I feel like Jason Tatum's getting a little too much disrespect.
I think what happens is when you have the success that Tatum's had early in his career, all the way up to now. And honestly, if you think about his development, he's lived up to whatever people thought he was going to be, right? He's become that. But I think once you become that, then the honeymoon period ends, right? And then it becomes all about, yeah, you put up numbers, you're all NBA, you're very good. We can book it that your team's going to be a title contender. When are you going to win a title, right? It becomes when are you going to win a title? And I think in a very unfair way, guys, and he's not the only one, but guys like Tatum, you could say Embiid, they become low-hanging fruit for every time they fail, right? We acknowledge how great they are, but at the same time, we go, well, there you go again. Embiid got knocked out by the Knicks, or Tatum came up short here or there. And to be fair, and I'm thinking about this as you're saying this, I've been guilty of this at times myself. Not that I'm not fan of both players, but I'm looking at both players, and when people want to bring up numbers like, well, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have won, they brought up how many playoff games they'd won together, and it's an impressive figure. It's actually a more impressive figure than guys who have won titles. But what I would tell people, and like I said, while I love that, what I want to be known as the guys that won a bunch of games or the guy that won a title. I'm gonna be the guy that won the title. You know what I'm saying? Like that is the thing. I do think sometimes they get over criticized. Anthony Edwards, to me, I'm with you. He's a terrific player, but he's also in that honeymoon phase where everybody's in awe of him. Eventually that wears off, and then it becomes all about, well, we thought you were going to be the face of the league and the expectations were up here and you haven't done it. I don't think he's going to be the face of the league by himself, Brett. I think he's going to be one of the faces. I think that Luka's going to be there because people forget Luka's only 24 years old. Luka's going to be there. Luka's younger than SGA. He's going to be one of the faces of the league. I think given some time, Wemby's going to be right there. I don't know that Chet won't be right there. And those are the young guys that we're talking about that could be the face of Halliburton. He could still get better. Maxi's on the come up. And then you think about the guys that are kind of in the middle. They're not part of the old guard, and the old guard is Steph, LeBron, KD, guys of that nature. But I'm looking at the guys that are like in the middle. I call it purgatory, and that's Giannis, and that's Joker. That these guys are 28, 29 years old. They're still relevant. They're still part of the faces of the league. And that's why I don't think there's going to be one face of the league right away. I know they want Edwards to be that, but I don't think he's going to be that alone because if Minnesota wins the championship this year, Brett, that'd be amazing, obviously, for the city of Minnesota, for the league in a many ways. But do I think him winning the championship this year would mean like, well, that's it, guys. Timberwolves about to run the league for the next 5 years? Like, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think that in this particular era in the NBA, there's much more parity than people realize. So if you're a guy that can pull off, if you can win 2 titles in the span of 4 years, to me, that's amazing. I don't think you're going to see the teams like the Spurs that win 5 titles in 7 or 8 years. I don't think any of those are around the corner in this current NBA. And I don't think there's one singular face, because I think you're too quick to dismiss the impact that Giannis and Joker and Embiid, because Embiid's like 28, 29. Like, they're 3 of the biggest names in the NBA, and they're not done. They're not gone. I have to believe. Matter of fact, I do believe. I told somebody, I think Giannis is motivated to win another title. Like, I think he thinks about his legacy in the bigger picture. And I think Giannis is like, I got to win at least one more. I want to win it. I'm sure he wants to win 5, but I know he's like, I got to for sure get me one more. So I don't think Giannis is done, and I don't think Joker is done. I think this is a great time in the NBA because you have a lot of young stars coming up, but you have some established stars who are trying to say, like, don't forget about us.
Actually, yeah, I think you're going to get the best version of Giannis next year because I think he's going to play angry. This is a guy that's had back-to-back playoffs pretty much robbed from him because he was injured. Played Miami with a back injury, tried to come back from early, and he didn't even make it this year. So I feel like next year we might get the best version of Giannis. And I agree. I feel like Joker's going to come in with something to prove too, which is scary to think about.
And that's right. What about Joker comes in and he's built like Giannis? Let's calm down. That's probably not going to happen. But my point is, you're right. Joker just lost, and I'm sure nobody's more upset than losing in Game 7 at home than he is. So yes, I think you're going to get a motivated Giannis, a motivated Joker. Embiid lost in the first round. Granted, he was injured, but I think you're going to get a motivated version of him. Like everybody keeps saying to me, like, well, Mo, this is the new wave. I get it. You've got that next generation of guys that are 22 in that 22 to 25-year-old range, but I think you're making a mistake if you overlook what Giannis is going to be with Embiid, with Joker's. I don't think those guys are finished yet. I think those guys still have to. They're going to have something to say about who wins a title in the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of people were talking about Joker in that Game 7. We'll touch on that for a second because they're really criticizing him hard when the other. And I thought it was kind of funny because I'm just sitting here like, dude, the Minnesota Timberwolves built the perfect team to slow down Jokic. Like, they don't have one, they don't have two, they have 3 almost 7-footers that they can just rotate and bang with them for 48 minutes. And to me, that series almost showed the crazy stamina of Joker. That doesn't get talked about enough, but that man got banged up and beat up, and it took him pretty much till the second half of Game 7 to finally start looking human and actually tired. So all the credit in the world for Joker. I think one underrated part about his game is just his stamina.
Yeah, and let's not forget, it's not like they lost 4-0. They lost a Game 7. Like if Michael Porter Jr. shoots the way he did versus the Lakers in the first round or leading up to the conference finals, I think Denver wins that series. Porter Jr. was in a horrible slump the whole series. Now, I want to say some of that is him, but a lot of that is the defense of the Timberwolves. That's what that was. I want to say, look at Ant. I mean, Jamal Murray came out in the first half of Game 7, Brett, and he was like, I'm about to take over. I'm about to have that kind of game. And then in the second half, Ant was like, you're not going to do nothing the rest of the game. And Jamal Murray didn't do anything. He put the clamps on Jamal Murray, and he ripped him a couple of times late in the game. He locked up Jamal Murray. He did. And I get it. If you're in a high, like I just locked up Jamal Murray, Kyrie, you're next. That's a mistake because Kyrie's he's a whole nother level of player from Jamal Murray. I think this is going to be a great series. I do. I don't know about the Pacers and the Celtics. I hope it is, but I think the Mavs and Timberwolves, I think that's going to be another 7-game series.
Well, currently the Celtics are up 15, and some bad news coming out of that game. Halliburton's out for the rest of the game with leg soreness. So,
all right. So Boston's going to go up 2-0, and Halliburton's hurt, which means you get what does he get? A couple of days of rest. When do they play again? Do they play Saturday?
I believe so. I don't think they get that much.
That's not much rest. That's not much rest at all.
Yeah,
because you have to travel back to Indy
every other day. So Saturday, and then they're right back to it Monday. So,
wow,
this just might end up being a straight up sweep for the Celtics without Halliburton.
Brett, it shows you how important them blowing that Game 1 was. It really does. It was monumental. I think Game 1, if they win it, we end up having a series. And I think that them losing it, and now we find out that Halliburton is injured. I don't want to use the word sweep, but let's just say it doesn't look good.
Yeah, and listen, I'm excited for Game 2 between the Mavs and Wolves. Listen, we all know what the Wolves really need to do. We all saw Rudy hit that nice little 17-foot Dirk post fade in Game 7. Just go back to that. He's money. He showed you he's money with that.
Brad, I was thinking about you when he hit that shot. When he hit that shot, I was like, Brett is somewhere going, hell yeah, Rudy. Hell yeah.
Dude, I saw that and I was like, like when you see a moment and you're just kind of like, this game isn't over yet, but it just feels like it's over. That moment to me felt like it's like, okay, the Timberwolves are going to win this one. If Rudy's cashing that, if that's an indicator on how on fire they are, yeah, I think they're in good hands.
I'll be honest, and I've seen Rudy Gobert play many, many, many times. I've never seen him take that shot before. Never. And he looked like he'd been watching Dirk videos.
I'll say somebody, the one guy jokingly in the one Discord I'm in asked, what happened if you would give Rudy Gobert Dirk Nowitzki's offense? And the first comment was, I think that guy's just quite comfortably the greatest player of all time.
If you gave Rudy Gobert Dirk's skill set to go along with what he does on defense, man, now we're talking about somebody that would surpass Tim Duncan. Yeah. He would immediately leap up into that conversation, right? Somebody of that talented. Yeah, that guy's top 3 at a minimum, if not number 1. Right. I'm with you.
It's funny. I saw another hypothetical that it was so easy to me. And it was a hypothetical that I read the first one that they had. I was like, yep, that's the winning. Because they had 3 names under it, but the first question was, who's the best player? Number 1, Shaq that shoots 90% from the free throw line. Like, I don't care. That's your answer right there. And the other ones were good too. It was like, oh, Jokic with like Hakeem defense. I was like, I mean, like, that's great.
I think Shaq shooting 90% from the line, it's over.
I'll say Lakers are like eight-peating if Shaq could shoot 90% from the line. They're looking like the Russell Celtics at that point.
What do you do with the Lakers if Shaq shot free throws? Let's say he shot free throws like Embiid does. Embiid shoots like 88%. Like, can you imagine? Because your recourse is to foul Shaq to slow them down. But if you can't foul him, or if that's all you do is foul him, and Shaquille O'Neal is making 22 free throws or whatever, like, yeah, him and Kobe, even if they can't stand each other, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal winning 6 or 7 titles.
Nah, easily. And then,
I love
of course,
that
I thought this was interesting. The Ringer comes out with their 25 and under list. So for anybody listening, their list goes like this: their best players, 25 and under. Number 1, Victor Wembanyama. Number 2, Anthony Edwards. Number 3, SGA. Number 4, Luka Doncic. Number 5, Halliburton. Number 6, Maxey. Number 7, Chet. Number 8, Jalen Williams. Number 9, Paulo Banchero. And number 10, it's a tie between Zion Williamson and Ja Morant. And I got to say, Mo, I like the list. I just think the names are in the wrong order, but I like the list because I don't think there's a way that Luka's not number 1. 4 is criminal. I love Anthony Edwards. SGA's great. Luka's the best guard in the league right now.
Yeah, and I'm going Luka 1. I'm with you. I think they got the right people, but Luka should be 1. I think Wemby should be 4. Like you can give me Ant, you can give me SGA behind Luka, and then Wemby. I think I told you earlier I'd probably have Wemby 1 up, but I'm not mad if you put Wemby behind SGA and Ant. But you're right, Luka's got to be number 1 on that list. And I think the only reason Ja Morant is as far down he is obviously because of all the things that have occurred over the last season or so. But if Ja Morant comes back 100% and he focuses on playing basketball, I'd leap him up to like number 5 automatically. I'd put him in the top 5.
No, that's fair. I think, Ja Morant's obviously a killer talent, and the only reason he's that low is obviously the last 2 years he hasn't really played much basketball. So I'm hoping that he's able to, keep his nose clean, get back on the court, and show the world how good Ja Morant is.
Because he was electric, man. Like I've seen the guy, even in defeat, just be a monster, like carry them. And the truth is, if Ja Morant is healthy and he's right, when you look at the development of Desmond Bane over the last couple of years, with Jaren Jackson has added to his game, like they easily could go from where they are now, a bottom dweller, to they're one of the top contenders in the West right away. I can see all three of those guys making the All-Star team.
Oh, absolutely. And Mo, the last thing I wanted to bring up was it was a post that you posted, Draymond and Shaq talking.
Oh,
They're
right.
talking about who would win between the the early 2000 Lakers and the Dynasty Warriors. And I think there's two ways to look at this because you actually corrected me in a comment and you said that Dre was talking about the pre-KD Warriors. And let me be clear, if the Lakers are facing the pre-KD Warriors, Lakers are going to wallop them. It might be entertaining for a while, but that series ends in like 5. I think the brilliance of their 3-point shooting will absolutely, carry them for a little bit, but they just don't have an answer. Add KD, different story, but
right. So right, that version, the Warriors that won the first title minus KD, that's not a good series. The Lakers win that in 5 and maybe 4, but the way that Draymond was so blasé, he was like, "Well, who's guarding Kobe?" And he was like, "Clay." And I was like, "He's gonna eat Clay alive." I was like, and then after he's done eating Clay alive, Draymond will try and eat him alive too. Like that's not a good matchup. That's not a. I think people need to be clear on a couple things. Klay Thompson is a very good defensive player. He's not an elite defensive player. He was never an elite I know they want to tell you that's not true. He was a very good defensive player, but they make it seem like there was a point when where Klay Thompson was like Dennis Rodman, like, or Michael. He wasn't that kind of defender. You know I'm right.
yeah.
All you have to do is go back and watch when they played the Cavaliers that next year, and Kyrie literally went through their lineup. He started by eating Steph alive. Then they put Clay on him. He ate Clay alive. Then they put Draymond on him. Too slow, ate him alive. They put Iggy on him. Too old, ate him alive. Like, I'm just telling you, and I have all the respect in the world for Kyrie. If he can do that to you, what do you think a 26, 27-year-old Kobe Bryant's going to do? Come on, man. That's not a good series.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that the best defender, ironically, I think Alex is right because I think the best option that they have, ironically, would be Iggy, but that is an older Iggy, so I think he might have issues with Kobe's speed and athleticism at that time. But
yeah,
I think Iggy would have the best chance because he wouldn't have to take up any load on offense, so he could literally just put his sole focus into shutting down, attempting to slow down Kobe.
And think about Shaq.
Yeah.
What are you doing there? What, you gonna put Pachulia on him? He's fouled out. Draymond's gonna eventually have to guard him. He's fouled out. Like we know what Kobe's gonna do, but like Shaq said, and Shaq every now and then he'll get to take spot on. He's right. He literally said, "Why you guys gonna win?" And Shaq said, "Because of me and Kobe." Like, right. Shaquille O'Neal in his prime, the guy that three-peated as Finals MVP winner, award winner. No, there's nothing Golden State could do with that. They would literally look. We got to foul Shaq. You have no choice. That Golden State would be in the penalty 5 minutes into the game, already be in the penalty. Like, and that also means that Kobe's shooting free throws, Derek Fisher shooting free throws, Robert Horry, like everybody's going to get the benefits of them being in the penalty. And the thing about Kobe is because he's ultra competitive, never mind that part. You don't think Kobe's going to be like, I don't want to guard Clay. I want to guard Steph. He knows he can guard Clay. Clay ain't got no handle. He wants to guard Steph. Like if he guards Klay Thompson, Clay's done. Clay's a great player when he was in his prime. But I want to remind you, when they played the Cavs in the finals, even when they won, the year they won, when Kyrie and Kevin Love was hurt, Klay Thompson was being guarded by J.R. Smith, and J.R. Smith had Klay Thompson in handcuffs. When they won the following year, he was being guarded by him, and J.R. Smith still had him in handcuffs. What do you think Kobe Bryant would do with Klay Thompson? Come on, man. Y'all, I am not going to argue. If you're talking about the Warriors with Kevin Durant, that's completely different. I think they win the series. I still think it's a good series, but I don't see how the Lakers could win that series. I don't, because yes, Shaq would present the same problems, but who's guarding KD? Who's slowing KD down? Because Kobe's got to make a decision. I'm guarding Clay or I'm chasing Steph. I can't guard. I mean, who is guarding KD? I think KD in that series look a lot like he did in the Cavs series. I think Golden State wins that series. That's a completely different monster when you add Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people think like, well, if Shaq's in the game, I can just park my rim protector and he can near the paint, and he can just kind of help, maybe block off some of Kobe's dunks and the attacks at the rim. But I think people don't realize this about Shaq. One is he had a little bit of range to him. I'm not saying he had 3-point line, but I trust Shaq to shoot a little hook shot inside 10 feet, and not to mention. Let's say if Kobe breaks you down off the dribble, your rim protector did not want to step out to Kobe, not necessarily because they will get posterized, but then you're just leaving Shaq all alone on the offensive glass where he made a lot of people look foolish. And that, to me, that's, I think a lot of people underestimate about Shaq is, yeah, you're going to have a defender kind of park near the paint, but you don't want to let Shaq on the offensive glass. And Shaq had little more range than people give him credit for.
I think he had a really good 10-foot jump hook. He did. He was effective that way. I just think that he is such a force. Again, we're talking about basically Shaquille O'Neal at his peak, at the MVP peak. And I think Draymond doesn't understand what he's dealing with. I would tell Draymond, go back and look at the film, man. Like when what this guy was like in 2000. And remember, because he in 2000, they could basically beat him to death and not get called fouls. In the current NBA, with what he does, Shaq's going to be at the free throw line shooting 18, 19 free throws a game. Now, he might miss 9 of them, but he's going to make 10. He's going to make 11. And he's going to get your team in the penalty. Kobe shoots free throws about 80-something%, so he's going to get some. D. Fish is a good free throw shooter. Fox was a good free throw shooter. Like, I just think that you underestimate the impact it has on your defense and your team when you get in the penalty that early.
No, absolutely. And I agree, Alex. This would be a fun one. 4-way playoff series between the early 2000 Lakers, KD Warriors, MJ's Bulls, and LeBron's Heat.
That's fun. I like
the playoff series between 4 of the greatest teams that we've ever seen. That would be a lot of fun.
I like that a lot.
It would be tough. I mean, MJ's Bulls, you're talking 3 first-team All-NBA defenders, and you have the greatest player of all time. I'd almost want to pick them, but that 2012, 2013, LeBron's also, like, single-handedly one of the, maybe put in the greatest season we've ever seen. Like, there's so many questions, but...
What would those matchups look like? Because I mean, think about the matchup. Is Jordan and Wade going head up? That's an incredible matchup. Is Pippen trying to guard? Again, another incredible matchup. Dennis Rodman going at. I mean, the guy that probably draws the short straw is Chris Bosh because he's dealing with Dennis Rodman.
I know I'd want to see the Bulls and Warriors just so I can watch Dennis Rodman and Draymond sit there all game and try to get into each other's heads, because that would have been absolutely hilarious. 90 Spurs or LeBron's Heat. I would take. That's a good one, but I think I would take LeBron's Heat in that one.
The 90 Spurs? Wait, you're talking about? You're talking about the Robinson?
Late 90s would be older. Robinson, Duncan.
Yeah, I would still take the Heat. That Heat team, I think, would overwhelm them.
Yeah, because late 90s. Yeah, like you're talking like the 99 title team with
right with Avery Johnson and Jaren Jackson's dad, and that team was literally about defense. They didn't score a lot. I think they wouldn't be able to score enough to beat Miami.
Yeah, that's kind of my question is, Tim Duncan, watching him cook on the post, but I don't think his post scoring would be enough to really. I think it's funny because that was prime Tim Duncan, but it shows you the importance of team comp because sure, maybe prime Tim Duncan's team might not have been enough to knock off the Heat, but obviously late career Tim Duncan's were, and I think that was more so because that team emphasized ball movement. They made the Heat move, and they made them work every possession, and they swung it around for the best shot. If you just dump it down to the post against that Miami team and let them load up on one player, then they're going to play elite defense, and they're going to outscore you, unfortunately. As much as I love Timmy.
Do you remember what that Spurs team did during the regular season? Because I think people forget that they completely revamped their offense. Like Duncan sacrificed offensive numbers because they went to that whole thing where every man's a scoring option, and they just kept moving the ball, and they adopted shooting threes more. Like, how many superstars who still were playing at a high level, even though he was older, can say, if this is going to help me win another title, I'm good with it. Like that was amazing. And Popovich, who says you can't teach old dogs new tricks, because that was something that he was against at first, and then he embraced it because he saw where the league was going. That's a great coach, accepting the fact that I've got to adjust, I've got to change my mindset. That particular Spurs team, I don't think it was the best Spurs team, but because Duncan was in his mid-30s, Ginobili was in his mid-30s, I think Parker was in his early 30s, like they were all like on the other side of their primes, and they still won, and they still were playing at a high level. And don't forget the importance of with Boris Diaw, how much he meant to that team and what he did, the versatility that he brought to that team. Patty Mills was a sharpshooter. Like they had a great team concept, and you were going up against this juggernaut that had just beaten you the year before. Those two finals back to back, they're two of the most entertaining finals I've watched, and I've watched a lot of them, but those were entertaining. And I know you're going to say, well, the Spurs beat them they beat them in 5, but those games were entertaining. They won in 5, but the games were entertaining.
Yeah, and I'll say this again about the Spurs. This is one thing I always like to mention with that like beautiful game 14 Spurs. A lot of teams try to replicate them, but it's really hard because not a lot of teams have like 9 deep of just straight playmakers. Like, Tony Parker's a playmaker. Boris Diaw is a playmaker. Tim Duncan could play make out of the post. He got much better at that. We got Manu Ginobili, Patty Mills, and then even guys like Kawhi Leonard were willing to swing the ball. Danny Green was willing to move the ball. Like they had just a ton of just great playmakers to just willing passers that just made it all work, and it resulted in that beautiful team. I love thinking about it and just watching Spurs clips, honestly, from that era.
So there's certain things like you can make an argument. I know they always talk about when you bring up single season greatest teams, and a lot of people will tell you it's the 86 Celtics. Some will say it's the 87 Lakers, the 96 Bulls, the 2000 Lakers are in that conversation. I think that Spurs team, because we're talking about for that single season, they could be in that conversation. The 2013 Heat, right? Like that version of LeBron that we both agree is the very best version of LeBron. Like that version of LeBron, I want to say this the right way so nobody gets upset. In that individual season, that might be the best individual season ever.
I agree, and I genuinely think it is. Like it's just so tough to match, right? Because you can't really name anything that he couldn't do in that year. How do you think the early 2000 Pistons with Ben and Rasheed Wallace would fare in today's game? It's tough, right? Because that's a team that thrived on physicality, and this is an era that loves to call fouls. I almost think that they might be a playoff team, but I'm not sure how great they would be because their play style, I think, at least in the year 2024, that whistle's getting blown a lot on them, and that would be a huge issue. But I do think that, there are a lot of smart defenders too. I think you're looking at the number 1 defense, but I'm unsure I think between fouls, and I'm not sure if that team would have enough offense to really make, go to 5 Eastern Conference Finals in, 6 years like they did.
Alex, I would argue that, you should remember that team, they're the reasons why they changed the hand checking rules again. That team did that. They changed that. Like they were so physical and so aggressive. And I mean, you could still argue that that team was the best defensive team that I'd seen in a long time, like for that single season. But to Brett's point, because the game is played differently, now could they adjust to the times? Maybe. And I still think they would still be very good defensively. But I'm with Brett. My concern would be, could they score enough offensively? Because they weren't a high scoring team. They suffocated you defensively, and they wanted to play their games into the high 80s or low 90s. I don't know if you could get enough offense from just Billups, Rip, and maybe a little bit here and there from Rasheed. I don't think that's enough. Not in today's NBA. And don't get me wrong, I'm with Brett. They're definitely good enough to be a playoff team, but I don't think that they'd go on a deep playoff run. Not in today's NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that team, but although it's funny because a lot of people talk about elite foul drawers, and I think if he played today, I think Rip Hamilton would be right up there because that man was insanely good at drawing free throws. He playing in like the mid 2000s, he was great at it. I couldn't imagine. I think that man would be probably close to double digits drawing free throws if he played now.
God, and chasing Rip off of screens, that's got to be as tiring as chasing Reggie Miller off screens. Just constant movement.
No, absolutely. Well, I say that is all we got for today. Mo, do you have anything else you want to add or talk about? Or
no, I just want to say thank you guys for checking Brett and I out. Thank you guys for following, subbing, liking the N1 podcast. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate your support. Make sure you check out all the great content that we have for you at the Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want more And One content, you can check out our Facebook page. There's the And One Discord that you can join. And I've tried to help promote the page too by going live on TikTok and
That's awesome.
having shows there. So, you'll see a lot more of us. And we hope to see you next Thursday, 8 o'clock, same time. We'll talk more playoffs and we'll make sure to bring you some more interesting topics. So thank you all for tuning in, and you guys enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page, and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.